Good evening and welcome to tonight's Undaunted, bringing into the news on church stories. I am Oyi Okbala. Let's begin. A cry for hope. Ambazonians find solace and faith amidst unrelenting oppression. In the midst of unrelenting oppression, Ambazonians are clinging to their faith as a beacon of hope in a desperate bid to survive. The crippling grip of the La Republic de Cameroon's colonial administration has unleashed a maelstrom of human rights abuses, forced displacements, and economic exploitation, leaving deep scars on the psyche of the Ambazonian people. As the war deepens, faith-based denominations have emerged as a lifeline, offering a sanctuary of spiritual nourishment, emotional support, and counseling services to a traumatized population. The city's residents are struggling to make ends meet as the cost of living continues to skyrocket, driven by the deplorable state of farm-to-market roads. The neglect of these critical roads has triggered a devastating ripple effect, with prices of staple foods, fruits, and vegetables increasing exponentially. The failed regime inability to construct and maintain roads in Ambazonia has exacerbated the crisis, plunging the nation into a vortex of conflict, neglect, and despair. As the Ambazonian people teeter on the brink of collapse, their faith remains unbroken. In the face of unimaginable suffering, they are finding solace in the spiritual realm, drawing strength from their communities and holding on to the hope of a better tomorrow. This is the story of their resilience, their courage, and their unyielding determination to survive against all odds. On tonight's Undaunted, President Sako has once again given hope to Ambazonians, furnishing them with strength that can't be bought. All these and more we'll take a look at tonight Undaunted. But first, let's get the prime headlines. Alright, tonight Undaunted, we'll take a look at the Bamenda city dwellers suffering as prices soar. Tonight we'll have the unaddressed plight of farm-to-market roads. Nkwen community Thwarts kidnapping attempt overpowers Imposter Amber fighters. We'll take a look at President Sako's address to Colonial French ambassador's visit to Ambazonia. Meanwhile, Ambazonians find refuge in religion amidst colonial oppression. All the African scene EU summit focuses on trade ties amid Trump effects. Meanwhile, Trump escalates trade war with vow of reciprocal tariffs. That's on the foreign scene. Now let's get the news in full briefings. Bamenda, the capital city of the Midland Zone of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, is grappling with an unprecedented hike in prices of basic commodity. The city's residents are feeling the pinch as the cost of living continues to skyrocket. At the heart of this crisis lies the deplorable state of farm-to-market roads, which has severely impacted the transportation of goods and services. The neglect of these critical roads has resulted in a ripple effect, with prices of staple food, fruits, and vegetables increasing exponentially. The situation has been exacerbated by the failed regime's inability to construct and maintain roads in Ambazonia, a nation that has been plagued by conflicts and neglect. Farmers, who are the backbone of the local community and economy, are struggling to transport their produce to the market. The poor road conditions have led to increased transportation costs, reduced access to markets, and lower incomes for farmers. This, in turn, has resulted in reduced food availability and higher prices for consumers. The people of Bamenda are crying out for relief. They are crying out for succor. In their words, they are saying, we are tired of living in a city where the simplest things, like accessing food, have become a luxury. The colonial government's failure to address the road issue is a clear indication of their disregard for our well-being. That's what frustrated residents are crying out, saying. The regime's inability to provide basic infrastructure such as roads has had far-reaching consequences. The lack of investment in road construction and maintenance has stifled economic growth. That's not all. It's been perpetuated with poverty and exacerbated the humanitarian crisis in the area. But then, as the prices of basic commodities continues to rise, the people of Bamenda are left to wonder if anyone at all is listening to their pleas. We have cried times and over again, and we are sure that the world must take notice of the dire situation in Ambazonia and urge the colonial regime to take immediate action to address the road issues or allow them safe passage and give them their independence. And so the people of Bamenda deserve better. They deserve access to affordable food, affordable health care, and education. They deserve a government that prioritizes their needs and well-being. And so we think that it is time for the regime to take responsibility and work towards finding a lasting solution to the farm-to-market road crisis. Until then, the people of Bamenda, will they continue to suffer, we ask? And will the people remain mired in poverty and neglect? This can be our anthem. For all we know, we are here for the people. Bryce Mbeseha, this is not the first time. It's not even the second time. This seems to be like our regular cry. Because we know that if Ambazonians, or if the market woman who probably has to go to the farm to farm and go to the market to trade her goods and all of that, we know that if they are not complaining, I mean, probably will not also be complaining. But this is what we see on a regular basis. The rains are about to turn down, we know, in Africa, and any moment from now, accessibility to roads, to the markets, to the farm, even to school will be a difficult task. And so here we are again, another day, decrying the pain and torture Ambazonians would have to go through. Welcome to tonight's Undaunted.
Thank you for having me once more. And thank you for having me to share my views and encourage others to listen to us. Yes, although our focus is on Bamenda, let me take this opportunity to say it is not Bamenda alone. Bamenda is just one of all the towns in Ambazonia. What is going on in Bamenda? You are going to find similar things in Mamfe. You're going to find it in Banso. You're going to find it in Kumba. You're going to find some in Buya, everywhere. So it's a problem that is all over Ambazonia, because the causes are the same. For those who venture to farm, if there's still land for them to farm, without being killed, bringing it to the marketplace is a difficult journey. Because you rightly put it, there's no road infrastructure. They have to carry it by head, at best, or in other words, probably they'll hire a motorbike or walk across. But however they get to the market, by the time they get to the market, the food is almost all sold in terms of extortion. You pay a bribe to a gendarme standing on the road, blocking an old tipper, carrying the plantains or the bananas or the yams. You will pay it, perhaps, to imposters created by the government to extort some money from you. By the time you get to the market, if those pictures you show there are from Bamenda, they are the same thing like in Nkwen. You find those women lying, those foodstuffs lying there, yams, cocoa yams, plantains. You'll be surprised to hear that those small spots where those women are putting those things to sell, they are paying for that spot. They are paying cash to those guys there. Not once. They have something they call the council, which is supposed to take money from them. And then they have council agents who are taking this money plus. And they ask them, what are they paying for? The ground is muddy. They are paying for the muddy spot on which they put their deteriorated food, yams, cocoa yams, pepper, whatever it is. They are paying for those places to put pepper there and sell in mud. By the time you buy that thing, it is so dirty. And of course, in that town, in the case of Bamenda, there's a very big organization called the Bamenda Urban Council, Urban City. These markets belong to the council. And so, what are they paying for? What are they getting out of the money they are paying even to the council there? They are getting nothing out of it. So it's a scheme to extort money from Ambazonians. And so the only solution is we will continue to go through that until we find our way out. And fighting our way out is not an easy thing, but we've started a journey. We have to fight and fight until we get what we deserve. What we deserve includes our own country at most, and within that country, structure that would really take care of our markets. Before they get to the market, structures that will bring stuff from the villages to the market. Most Ambazonians are village dwellers. They don't live in towns. But they have to sell their stuff in the village market at the expense of the government. That's never done anything for them. They are fighting there, physically. Some police or gendarme will appear and take them into custody, extort money from them and let them go. Just like we talked last segment, last Tuesday, I think. We talked about the farmer graziers, cow rearers, and ordinary farmers fighting over space. The duos and the prefers and they come there, but they find no solution. But they don't go back empty-handed. They go back home with their pockets full of money. And so this is a criminal government that we will find ourselves. We have to get ourselves out of it and build ourselves for a better future. Again, those mothers, women will continue to suffer like that. The only solution is getting out. And you get out by fighting. And in terms of this government, we fight with a widow's might. Even from where you get set up planting, if you can only have 10 francs, donate, sponsor this fight. If you cannot give us, if you see a genuine fighter, Ambazonian fighter, protect him, give him something, hide him from the enemy's camp. And so that's what I can say about that. It's unfortunate we are going through this. And we have been going through this for the past 50, 60 years. But there comes a time when we say an end has come. And we think the end of this nonsense is close to arriving. Over to you.
All right. While we think that there will be an end to all of this, the people are actually still making efforts by themselves, times and over again. We've reported here how the same people would come out together and contribute money and, do some part of the roads by themselves and, do something for themselves. So this is not when somebody will be asking, is it every time government? What are the people doing for themselves? The people are actually doing a lot for themselves. And so in a daring display of community resilience, residents of Nkwen in Bamenda for the kidnapping attempt of 3 individuals masquerading as Amber fighters from Mso on Thursday, March 13th. Now, the imposters allegedly targeting a prominent businessman were confronted by the victims' children and neighbors who bravely intervened to prevent the abduction. It has emerged that these individuals were not genuine Amber fighters. Of course, it can be. Ambazonian State Army, they are not, but rather thieves exploiting the issues on ground, the conflicts for, of course, their selfish moves. and motives. He had been using the guise of Ambazonian state army to terrorize and extort innocent civilians. So as the imposters fired shots into the air to intimidate the crowd, they soon found themselves out of ammunition. Seizing the opportunity, they enraged community members armed with sticks and machetes empowered the fighters, leaving none to escape. The quarterheads subsequently took custody of the imposters and transported them to the nearby place where they were pronounced dead. Now, this historic act, or should we call it heroic act, by the Nkwen community demonstrates the power of collective action in resisting violence and protecting one another from those who seek to exploit and harm the people. Just like I said before the speech, when you ask what are the people doing for themselves, where they are not even protected, where they are not given any form of relief, they are their own strength. Barrister Mbeseha, would you consider this a mob justice, or would you consider this somehow self-defense?
The question is it mob justice? Yes. But is this appropriate at this time? Of course, yes. And therefore, I can analyze from that angle. You see, the Ambazonian cause is a legitimate cause. But we are not going to mortgage that legitimate cause to criminals, be they Ambazonians or anybody else, they are supporters from the Republic of Cameroon. Because they claim we're Amba people for a while. That's been going in Bamenda all the time. Any Ambazonian boy or girl, any Ambazonian person who turns his own weapons against his own people by stealing from them, by extorting from them, is a criminal. It's a criminal. And in self-defense, you are free to kill that person. Because the person who comes to rob you with arms is an armed robber. What does he intend to do? He or she will kill you to get what they want to get from you. So killing in that circumstance, in self-defense, is acceptable. It's a legitimate self-defense. And so they should do that. Because of late, we have found all these things happening, not just in Nkwen, all around Bamenda, often in Momo, and in many other parts of Ambazonia, of your own sons and daughters coming out to extort from you with guns, armed, in the pretext that they are Amba fighters. No, the Amba alone does not make you a fighter. If you are turning against your own people, you are a criminal. And so, if it is mob justice on you, it is an eye for an eye. That is justified. But I've explained before that in most instances, or in some instances, those, even if they take them to the gendarme or to the police, they will end up getting money and being set free. It will never go to court. And so that's where we're caught between the rock and the Red Sea. So to your question, is this mob justice? Of course. Is it a self-defense? Actually self-defense. What they have done to save themselves is justified. And to crown it all again, I've said, no Ambazonian people, village, town, shall mortgage its cause, the cause for Ambazonia, to criminals. Even if those criminals tie themselves Ambazonian fighters, even if they claim to belong to Ambazonia, they are criminals. They need to be punished, to receive the equal punishment. Because they are not just having guns to threaten you, they kill people. We have seen people dead in Bamenda, dead in Nkwen, dead in Bali, because of this people. And so, again, no true Ambazonian fighter would do what they were doing. So they are fake Ambazonian fighters by themselves or sponsored by Yawande, be they ministers or some CPDM acolytes. And so it's legitimate. That is to teach the rest of the people a lesson. That if you fall into this trap, might not be safe. But is it worth the trouble for a genuine Ambazonian child? Is it worth the trouble to go carry guns, lose your own life, because you want to extort 10,000, 50,000, even a million from a poor person, poor woman, poor man, just a poor other citizen. It is not. So our brothers and sisters who are ever doing that, if they are doing them, should be encouraged, should be told that they stand a big risk, the risk of their own life. They are not going to wait until we get to Boya and try them. Lie. We don't have a prison to keep them. Waiting that tomorrow when we get to Boya, we'll set up courts and try them there. It's not going to happen. For the meantime, don't do it. If you do it, you are taking a risk of your life. And so congratulations to the Nkwen people who did that. And encouraging more of such things to be done. But to do it, you should be sure that that is a criminal. In this case, he was a criminal. Over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Barrister Mbeseha. Well, moving on with some of the reports tonight. On Tuesday, we had a report that Thierry Marchand, the Colonial French ambassador to neighboring La Republic to Cameroon, had allegedly suggested a federation between Ambazonia and Cameroon, causing strong reaction from Ambazonian elites who want full independence. Now, reacting, President Ikome Sako of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia recently addressed a recent visit from the French ambassador to La Republic to Cameroon. He raised concerns about manipulative tactics used by him with support from France and stressed the need for real dialogue and respect for sovereignty. The president recently discussed the French ambassador's visit and thanked the global community for its support. He criticized the manipulative strategies from La Republic to Cameroon backed by France. He expressed concern that the visit aimed to maintain France's interest in the territory, as he believes France's military involvement has led to instability and suffering in Ambazonia. So while the ambassador claims to focus on security, President Sako argues that true diplomacy should prioritize dialogue and respect for sovereignty. He condemned France's support for the colonial military actions against Ambazonia and called for justice and good governance instead. President Sako also criticized France's empty diplomatic promises and urged the community to recognize the people's desire for self-determination. Meanwhile, the ambassador's visit to Alliance Francaise in Bamenda was viewed as an attempt at cultural dominance. Lastly, the president noted France's declining influence in Africa and called for new partnership that promotes mutual development. He reaffirmed Ambazonians' commitment to international legal processes and insisted the crimes against the people must not go unpunished. The government of Ambazonia encourages all diplomats to reject manipulative tactics and focus on genuine conflict resolution and human rights. Barrister Mbeseha, there's an audio I would like us to play, but before then, when you talk about reacting diplomatically, remember over the weekend, one of the president's promise to the people was that he was going to have more diplomatic connections and foreign interactions and all of that. Sensing this sound by the president, do you think that is very diplomatic in addressing this particular issue and this visit? Remember, we started this discussion on Tuesday, and here we are seeing the president's reaction to this. I'm really impressed that he reacted, but then do you think this is diplomatic enough from the president? Let's get to hear from you.
Well, to ask if it is enough is a difficult question, but I can only address the diplomatic nature of our cause, which to justify why the president said that. We've always said that, you see, Ambazonia, British Southern Cameroon, was the creation of the international community. In other words, different countries coming together. Diplomacy deals with nations. In 1919, when Germany lost its Cameroon protectorate, it was the international community that seized the people, divided us officially into two parts, giving one part to France and the other part to the UK. That's the international community. In 1961, when they gave us so-called independence, before that, in 1945, we became a trust territory under the United Nations. The United Nations is an international organization. That's an organization that brings different countries together. They created the United Nations Trust Territories. So British Southern Cameroon, as a United Nations Trust Territory Category B, was a creation of the community of nations in the world. So diplomats sat there. Those who go to United Nations in New York or anywhere are diplomats, from which the word diplomacy is carved from diplomats. So it is a diplomatic thing. And so when it came over, when they sat down again in 1946 and signed the trust agreement, we were before the United Nations, before the international community, before a world of diplomats, promising to govern this territory to independence, and so on and so forth. So if we move forward and see 1961, the agreement, the plebiscite, and then of course Resolution 1608, it is all about diplomacy, voting. Here 68 countries voted. Those are different countries that came together. The people sat there and voted are called diplomats. So our problem lies in their hands. They were the ones who created us. Diplomacy should be given the best option, because our problem is not like any other problem in the world. If you go to any country that was existing by 1961, that was at the United Nations, they can find the records there. They were active participants in creating what has brought this. So they should be active participants in solving the problem. And so diplomacy is important, absolutely important. Is that enough? Certainly not enough, because we have gotten to a point where we have to fight for them to know that we are dying. We have to die, we are being killed. And so we reach out to them to show the bleeding of their own actions. It was their own actions that took us to this. And so diplomacy alone is not enough. Because when we go to the diplomats now, be they British diplomats, French diplomats, American diplomats, Japanese, Chinese, we have to show them the evidence. Where you put us in 1961, this is what it has brought to us. See, our people are being killed. See, people are being murdered. Our villages and towns are being burnt. Not because we have done anything, but because you, these diplomats around the world, you forced this thing on us. The idea of the plebiscite was decided by the United Nations. Southern Cameroon was never part of the vote. There was nothing we could do. And so, the plebiscite, as decided in 1959, as conducted in 1961, was the work of the United Nations. The plebiscite officer, the Iranian who was appointed to come and supervise or oversee the plebiscite, was not an appointee of the Southern Cameroon, was an appointee of the United Nations. And so there's so much to talk about diplomacy. But again, diplomacy must go hand in hand now with the fighting because of where we find ourselves. We'll go there to tell them where we find ourselves and how we got there, and tell them we have to get out of it. Why? Because they conducted the plebiscite. Assuming there was a union, if there was ever any union before between Southern Cameroon and the Republic of Cameroon, it was an internationally imposed union. Under international law, there's no text anywhere in the world, not recognized by international law, that country enters into a union, they can never pull out. No, it doesn't exist. So if you go into a union freely by voting to join these people, the international community should recognize that we have the right to freely opt out of it. Nothing short, nothing long, longer than that. So the world should know it, because it was a mistake. Yaoundé is breaking the law, and France, they are all breaking the law by lying to the international community that, oh, this is one indivisible. Now, there's nothing like something one indivisible, which is on record, that the two parties, the three parties came into the agreement voluntarily. They can voluntarily walk out. So there's nothing like one indivisible. So diplomacy is good. We'll remind them of where we're coming from. and tell them where we're heading to. That is the reason for which our course is properly justified, legally, diplomatically, and internationally. Over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Barrister Mbeseha. But still in line, President Sako has addressed the nation to remain strong and steadfast till independence. And of course, he has promised that everyone should focus on the fight. Let's get that audio.
Ambazonians, I want to remind all of us that we will not always have the same opinion on issues, but to be united, we have to maintain the same goals. I say this to say that based on your experience, you may have a different opinion. Based on your intellectual training, you might have a different opinion. Based on personal circumstances, you're out of pressure or no pressure, your own sense of fairness, you can have a different opinion. All this can happen without you being a La Republic agent, to be fair. Now, citizens of a country, they tend to look at things from a narrow perspective, narrower than the perspective of the government, because the government is the government of the people. That means it's the government for everybody. The government for the good, the bad, and the ugly. The government is the father in the polygamous home, father of everyone. If you go to a country, the citizens of a particular locality have a different perspective from government because they see everything from their own lenses, from their own circumstances, from their situation. The government sees the country from the air. They see every nook and cranny of the country, and the interest of the whole nation is their focus. But for us, individuals outside the government, including activists, they see things from a narrower perspective. They see it according to their experience, according to their personal values, according to their training and learning, according to their own sense of fairness, according to how it touches them, it affects them in one way or the other. In that case, I want to talk to our comrades in prison, who may be anywhere. The government sympathizes with anyone who is suffering out of, who is innocent, who is suffering and is innocent, who has fought diligently, sacrificially for his country, for his people, and finds himself in the dragnet of the enemy or whoever. And today is paying a hard price for love of country, for his patriotic acts or her patriotic acts. The government sympathizes and is ready to fight for such. But if there's anyone amongst us called the Southern Cameroonian and Ambazonia who inflicts pain on his own people, from Meme to Manyo, from Mezam to Momo to Bui, just to name a few, if there's anyone amongst us who takes delight to inflict pain on our people, we should understand that the government is the government, not only government for the perpetrators, is also the government for the victims. That's why we cannot talk about justice for the perpetrators without talking about justice for the victims. As the government, of course, as citizens can decide to see it from your own perspective and have your own opinion. But as the government for everybody, we cannot be in solidarity with the perpetrator and not be in solidarity with the victim. So if not that this matter is being brought up, it's unfortunate, but when it comes up, especially from people that are very respected in Ambazonia, you force me to come out and address it too. The least or the most the government can do to a perpetrator, to somebody who deliberately afflicts his people with pain, real pain, the most the government can do when that person is in trouble is to be quiet, because I'd rather be quiet than to open my mouth and tell a lie just to defend the indefensible, because I will be doing justice to one and injustice to others who are even more in number. If government is the government of the people, it is the government for all. So I chose to be quiet. And if we are talking of solidarity with some who decided to go the route of excesses against our people, if we decide to talk at this time, it will not be good. It won't be good. So choose to be silent and let it be so, because first, don't understand what solidarity means. Does solidarity mean we'll contribute money to help such? Does solidarity mean we'll go and write protest letters and organize protest marches and say the things are not true? I want to tell you that some of the issues that caused the arrest of some of us, they are witnesses that came from the ground. Those witnesses were not fabricated in the diaspora. That's by what I know. So, and when you are 7,000 miles away and things happen on the ground, you are technically incapable of being in charge. But when you come out and in first person admit that you did it, that you are in charge, what do you want us to do? To say what you said wasn't correct or what you did was right? For me, it doesn't make sense. Sometimes Certain things happen, so we learn. We that are observers learn. We that remain learn. Prosecute the struggle with a greater sense of diligence, knowing that we are not somewhere in a Kiliwindi or in Jekwa prosecuting the struggle. We will learn. We will learn. Some lessons are learned without pain. Others are learned the hard way. They all will learn. So when a citizen is giving an opinion, it's not a directive. It's an opinion. And when the government making statement, don't make statements opinion, they're making policies. Our policy is justice for all our citizens. That's our policy. We stand for justice for all our citizens. Any of our citizen is hurt by any one of us, and the citizen comes to us and complains, we will deal with it squarely. If he did not complain to us because we don't have the judicial powers and they complain elsewhere, we will encourage the justice system anywhere in the world to do justice, to do just that, the right thing. Thank you. Just from the desk of the president.
Right, Barrister Mbeseha. He says justice for one is justice for all. Right? He says the government is not sleeping when it comes to issues of Ambazonia. These once in a while audios he gives around to encourage the people whenever there is tension around seems to be a very, very sensitive and diplomatic move. Do you agree with me on this? And what do you think about that as well?
Well, I think I agree with what you have said, but I also think that the president used that platform because in that segment, the word government is pronounced so many times. He tried to let people know the importance of the government that he leads, because of all these so-called groups that purport to work for Ambazonia. This is the only one that is the government. And the choice of the word government was not by error. We chose government. And he addressed that government thing after addressing France, the visit of the French ambassador. And that should take me back a little bit. Like in the last segment, I showed how France was responsible in what had full responsibility for what everything we were going through. And so the French proposing a federation after their so-called long speeches and so on and so forth would suggest that they don't know what this struggle is about. But they know it. There's something France can do right now. He doesn't need the support of anybody else but the unwilling party. Because all our fight is about the restoration of our institutions as of 1961. Those institutions included the government. They were seized and destroyed by France through the Republic of Cameroon. And so if they realize that the war is bad, that they were wrong, France can simply withdraw. Then ask the people to withdraw. We'll go back to 1960. We don't need their permission to set up the government. We'll set up the government the way we want. That will end the struggle right now, this night. If they do that, France can do all that. And so back to the president telling our people, the government, the role of government. Government in Ambazonia, former British Southern Cameroon, is a representative of the people, a representative of the majority of the people. It's not a representative of the government Yaoundé, where the president has 100% vote. It is a representative of the people based on simple majority. It was a parliamentary system. If there were 10 seats and you won 6, that's all. The 4 others know that they did not agree with you, but you are the government. You form the government. They represent everybody, including those who disagree with you. And so that is a government for everybody in that territory. The government is not a rock. You can change it, but it should be by the will of the people, not by imposition. And so the importance of government, he has emphasized a lot there. The government, he said, because people, let us agree, quarrel with whatever they want to quarrel, but I made the simple fact that there's a government. Maybe a government I don't like, but there's a government right there. Nobody, I don't remember any country in the world, perhaps except Cameroon, where they have a government of 100% support from the world, from their own citizens. It has never happened. In British Southern Cameroon, we never had that. Remember these stories of elections in 1959, where Foncha beats Ndele, and Ndele was the premier, gives up, and Foncha forms a government. Ndele and his own people did not work out. They were not alone. There were many other parties. There were many other parties. They didn't walk away because they did not win. They didn't form their own governments because Foncha had defeated them. And so that is the essence of government. To our brothers and sisters who are there, the president told them, but recognition of government is international. We represent this state. There's no country in the world, we talk about international community diplomacy. There's no country in the world, there's no moment that you go to the United Nations and find all the Americans sitting there, or all the British people, or all the French people. They are represented by their own governments. And so we have the right to be represented by our own government, a government of our own choice. Not a government given to us by France, not a government given to us by the United States, not a government given to us by China. We shall have our own government that will function the way we want it to function. And we shall represent our own people where and whenever necessary. And so we don't need the permission of France. We don't need the permission of the UK or any other country around the world to create a government. Which is why you find that we have a government now. Though this is a government in exile, but you cannot underestimate it. It is a government. You like it or not, it's a government. And so that's what it is. Our own people should recognize the government. Back in Boya, by the time we get there, I was talking about the segment on the food market, food prices. We will impose taxes. It's not going to be a government without tax. There will be a tax department. They will collect taxes and build those spaces where the women are selling food. If they must come and sell food in the market, we will provide them roads. That will be the duty of government. If those armed robbers, hijackers, who are coming with guns to steal from people, we will catch them. At that time, we will not maim them, we will not kill them. Once they are caught, we will subject them to the justice of the state. That is the function of government. And so we have a government, our brothers and sisters, who for one reason or the other disagree with President Sako or with me. I'm not the government. President Sako is not the government. He's just the leader of the government. And so disagree with us, as the president said himself, without being disagreeable. Come if you don't want to. Not everybody in Ambazonia is a government minister or works in a government department. But the government works for the interest of every one of us. Again, I say we'll have taxes, but for now we don't have taxes. We'll have to raise some funds to do the very basic functions of a government. What are the basic functions of government? We'll provide people who are sick basic care. We'll provide refugees and other people the basic assistance. Through what? Where do we get all this money? We get all this money through voluntary contribution, which we call draft. And so for the draft, everybody, that was during the draft. Everybody is called to come on board and provide your widow's mite. And when it comes to governance, provide your own input for things you don't like. Make sure it reaches the correct avenue. Expect answers, but don't expect answers to be the way you want. Because whereas your opinion might be very, very important, it might not be the opinion that will prevail. On one single item, topic, we'll have so many suggestions. So make sure your input reaches the correct people, but you cannot impose your will alone on the government. So we must realize this, because what the problem we have right now, up to this point, is people, to whom the president was talking, who impose themselves as the angels, as the gods of the revolution. That's what we're there in the government. The government is a melting pot of ideas. But at the melting pot, only one idea will come out that will be applied. And so this is a government. They know us. We're a government in exile. The international community, that is the diplomatic world, understands what the government in exile is. It is we who are not understanding. If we understood these elements, if we understood these basic things, we will not be fighting, trying to kill the leader of the government, trying to destroy the whole structure of our government, because that is what we're fighting to reinstate. We're fighting this war to reinstate our institutions. And the first institution that we shall reinstate as soon as we get back to Buea is our government of Southern Cameroon, as existed in 1961. What does that mean? We'll get back there to Buea. In 1961, we'll have a premier, a prime minister with his own ministers, what departments of government, education, justice, and so on. We'll go back to there. Again, as I've said, we shall not need the permission of Yaoundé to do this. So France, whatever you want to do, as I just said, you don't need the European Union to help you. You don't need that. You don't even need the United Nations. You only need yourself, because you created this problem for yourself. Tell Cameroon, yes, that you support, that you're wrong. Let's get out of Ambazonia, and the war is over. And I said, by this night, if France decreed through Yaoundé that they are pulling out, that will be the end of the war. That will be the end of this debate. We'll get to Buea. If our government is in shambles, that is not their problem. Whatever difficulties we have there, if we need their help, then we could need the help of our country in the world. We'll talk to them on equal terms, give us this help in return for this or that. That's how it is. So I think that statement went to the president, to our own people, but it should also go back to France. Because France, before they continue to fumble and step in their feet where they did not, they should not pretend that they don't know. If they didn't know, they have learned this thing from us. Ambazonian struggle is not about what France is talking. It's simple language. Ambazonian struggle is about the restoration of its institutions as existed before the so-called 1961, even plebiscite. Once they have this, once the international community sees this, they should realize where they made the mistake. Because even if they attempted to join us, which I've said before, an attempted union, or a union in fact, by several people or two parties voluntarily can be dissolved at any moment by one of those parties or all of them agreeing. So again, there's nothing like one indivisible Cameroon, because it doesn't exist in case of Ambazonia under international law. That said, I think I've answered your question, I hope. If you have more to ask, I'm still available.
All right, but definitely, Barrister. But then let's just get into the next report. The ongoing struggle for independence in Ambazonia has taken, a profound toll on the Ambazonians and all of the people. But as the La Republic du Cameroon Colonial administration continues to exert its control, Ambazonians are increasingly turning to faith-based denominations as a source of comfort, relief, and resilience. So in the face of unrelenting oppression, Ambazonians are finding solace in the spiritual realm. Churches, mosques, and other places of worship have become beacons of hope, providing a sense of community, support, and spiritual nourishment. And so the La Republic du Cameroon's colonial administration has been marked by human rights abuses, forced displacement, and economic exploitation. And so as a result, many Ambazonians are experiencing intense psychological trauma, anxiety, and depression. And so faith-based denominations have stepped in to fill the void, offering counseling services, emotional support, and spiritual guidance. Pastor Emmanuel, a local church leader in Bamenda, observed in his church, says our congregation has seen a significant increase in attendance since the war began. People are seeking comfort, hope, and succor, and most especially a sense of belonging. He says we provide a safe space for them to express their emotion, their pains, their struggles, their cries, and they find solace in their faith. Similarly, Imam Abubakar, a Muslim cleric in Buea, noted and said in his words, "The mosque has become a refuge for many in our community. We offer prayers, counseling, and support to those affected by the war. Our faith teaches them to persevere, to have patience, and to trust in Allah's plan. And so the role of faith-based denominations in Ambazonia extends beyond spiritual support. Many churches and mosques have established community programs to provide humanitarian aid, food, shelter to those displaced or affected by the conflict. And so as the Ambazonian struggle for independence continues, it is clear that faith-based denominations will play a vital role in supporting their nation's inhabitants, just like they are doing. How they are providing spiritual comfort, emotional support, and practical assistance. So these organizations are helping Ambazonians cope with the frustration of colonial oppression and help find hope in the midst of adversity and chaos. Barrister Mbeseha, more like when all hope is lost, there is always someone up there, depending on what you believe in, to help you. There is God above who is there to answer you when you cry, when you pray, and when you call on Him. And so this report has it deep rooted in the fact that Ambazonians are helpless, and so they've all turned to God. By Pastor Emmanuel in the report has testified of the increasing number of congregants or congregation, or that his congregation has increased since the war began. So it's just what it is. People are suffering, and the only place they find peace, they find love, they find help, they find solace is in religious places. I'm sure you're not shocked.
Yes, I'm not shocked, because we're all human. You see, the basic thing is, when any human community or individual feels hurt, feels some pain, you turn to God for help. You pray. In the majority of cases, people are so happy moving down the street, don't pray. You actually pray only when you have a difficulty. And prayer is not synonymous with being religious, Catholic, Baptist, or Muslim. No, it's just turning to God. This has been going on even before all these established religious bodies came. Back in our villages, if the village was facing a trauma, as simple as that, sometimes in the whole year they were having barren women, they turned to the God of the village and they offered sacrifices. Our women need children, and they prayed, and God answered them. Because often after that event, such events, women will give triplets. So God is there, the helper for everybody. Coming to Christianity, for example, you see, Christ was on earth during his 3-year service. He had crowds following him. Crowds. Not because they were not happy people following him. They were following him because they were sick or they were hungry. You say, 5,000 people will give you a loaf of bread, let them all eat, because they're all hungry. They followed him because they had no food. They knew that he could manufacture food by his powers and give them food. They carried people on bamboo beds, call it like that, and dropped them through the roof because they had been sick, nobody cured them. And so they thought that if the man who is the Son of God could just touch him, touch a patient, you get well. So religion is a place of sanctuary in difficulty. Ambazonians are not different. We hope, we've always said this, even as far as this proverb is concerned, we've always said this line. I've been saying it, maybe others have not been saying. We said, for example, draft, do something to help. But if you have nothing to do, if you don't have anything, pray. Therefore, prayer is an arm, it's a weapon against suffering. Just pray. Because at least most of us, if not all, believe in God. In any form, whether it is a Muslim God, a Christian God, a village God, we believe in some form of spirituality. And so what the people are doing is perfectly within what they should be doing. Not everybody can give money. Not everybody even knows where to escape to in every single village. Most of our villages are completely deserted. But you go there, you still find one remnant of an old woman, an old man with 2 or 3 children or nobody. They have nobody to live in the village. They have nowhere to escape to remain there. What is keeping them alive is simply prayers. God help us. Let this thing end, and we can at least live with our neighbors. So prayer is part and parcel. It's a very good weapon and it helps. I think that's my belief. It helps. So we should encourage these people. The only thing that we require is that in an organized religion, like that pastor in Bamenda, like the bishops and the priests, like the organized religion, Presbyterian, Baptist, and so on, leadership of those churches, be the imams in the mosque, be the pastors in the churches, be the priests, wherever they find themselves. Even at the level of the village, it is only a catechist. Let them be honest people. Let them be able to give honest prayers. Because when you mix prayer with your personal beliefs, it doesn't work. Let God find the solution. You cannot, for example, go and pray. I'm taking an example. You're a pastor or you're a imam. Oh Lord, God or Allah, let the Grand National Ladder succeed. Oh, let the special status succeed. Because you're praying from an angle of injustice. You will not succeed. So we pray that because we have organized religion now, leaders in those religious organizations should be able to pray very, very well. Many other religious organizations, most particularly the Catholics, the Baptists, the Presbyterians, they do a lot. At this time, they have hospitals that our wounded go to. They have counseling centers where they counsel the victims of war. So they are already doing so much in terms of religion. These people will not have been there. There will be no Presbyterian church in Cameroon unless they come to spread their religion. There will be no Roman Catholic church in Cameroon unless they came to spread their religion. And they came there, as Shirley said it, until recently, they own all the schools. Our children went to school. I went to the school. If there was no religious school, maybe I would not have seen the four walls of the classroom. And so it is within their role. We have understood them. They have been useful to us. Very, very useful to us. We've seen people being carried to Acha. They call it Acha. People have been carried to Bengo. We've seen people being carried to clinics left and right, which are all owned by religious organizations. So we can only say that that's within their reach. That's the best they can do. The religion is good. We should never forget the Almighty God. In any form or shape. If you're in the village, that's still okay. If you're in the mosque, that's as good as being in a Catholic church, as being in a Presbyterian church, as being in a Pentecostal or any organized group that calls the name of God. That's good for us. Over to you.
Right, thank you so much, Barrister Mbeseha. Thank you so much. I'm happy you also agree that when they call on God, answers will definitely come in. This is where we draw the curtains from your own end on tonight's Undaunted. Coming up right after the break is news across Africa.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Well, South Africa's EU summit focuses on trade, ties, and meet Trump's effect. Well, senior European Union officials were in South Africa for a summit with President Cyril Ramaphosa on Thursday. That centers on bolstering trade and diplomatic ties as both feel the impact of the Trump's administration confrontational foreign policy. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and European Council President Antonio Costa arrived at the meeting with Ramaphosa at his Cape Town office, being the first EU-South African summit since 2018. So the focus of the 27-nation bloc will switch to its biggest trading partner in sub-Saharan Africa after the EU announced retaliatory tariffs against Washington in response to U.S. President Donald Trump's new duties on steel and aluminium. Well, this explores new avenue for economic trade and investment cooperation, as well as address any challenges and trade irritants. Recently, South Africa has been singled out for sanctions by the Trump administration over some domestic and foreign policies that the U.S. president cast as anti-American. Still on, Trump Trump issued an executive order last month cutting all U.S. funding to South Africa, accusing it of a human rights violation against a white minority group in the country and of supporting some bad actors in the world like the Palestinian militant group Hamas and Iran. However, on the contrary, von der Leyen visits re-emphasized EU support for South Africa's presidency of the Group of 20 leading rich and developing nations this year. Another area where the U.S. has criticized South Africa while boycotting some early G20 meetings. South Africa hopes to use its leadership of the group to make progress on which or help for poor communities and countries, especially on debt reliefs and more financing to mitigate the impact of climate change. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio dismissed some of these priorities for the G20 and skipped a foreign ministers' meeting of the group in South Africa last month. He also said that he wouldn't attend the main G20 summit in Johannesburg in November, indicating that the U.S. would give little attention to attempts at international cooperation through the bloc, which includes 19 of the world's major economies, the EU and the African Union. Rubio is attending talks with other top diplomats from the group of 7 industrialized democracies in Canada starting from today. Meanwhile, the EU said that von der Leyen would use the meeting in South Africa to announce a new investment package that uses public and private grants and loans to finance green energy projects in South Africa. And not only that, but also help to improve transport infrastructure like railways and ports and strengthens its vaccine production capacity. And so the US withdrew this month from an agreement that gave funding to South Africa and 2 other developing nations to help them transition to clean energy sources. The EU has also pledged money to the Just Energy Transition Partnership and said that it will be committed to their programs. All right, still on tariffs, let's get what the news across the globe is saying. While still on tariffs, U.S. President Donald Trump's latest move to impose import taxes on steel and aluminium has sparked a heated trade war, with the European Union and Canada retaliating with their own tariffs. Trump has vowed to respond with reciprocal tariffs next month, targeting countries worldwide. Whatever they charge us with, we are charging them, he warned. So this escalation has rattled financial markets, raising concerns about the impact on economies and consumers globally. Trump's tariffs aim to protect America's steel and aluminium industry, which he claims have been harmed by unfair trade practices and global excess capacity. The president's decision has been met with praise from U.S. steel makers, who credit his America First trade policy for strengthening the industry. Studies have shown that tariffs can be an effective tool for achieving economic and strategic objectives, with some analysis suggesting they can even lead to significant reshoring in industries like manufacturing and steel production. However, critics argue that tariffs will lead to higher prices for consumers and potentially harm U.S. businesses that rely on imported steel and aluminium as the trade war intensifies. It remains to be seen how Trump's tariffs will affect the global economy. But on the other hand, Russia regains control. And so in this development, Russian forces have successfully recaptured Suda, the largest town in the Kursk region previously occupied by Ukraine. So this strategic victory, confirmed by Moscow, poses a substantial challenge to Kyiv's negotiating position amid mounting pressure to reach a peaceful resolution to the ongoing war. Sudar, located in western Russia's Kursk region, had been under Ukrainian control since April 2022. The town's capture was a rare victory for Ukraine in the region. But however, with Russian forces now in control, Ukraine's territorial bargaining chips have been significantly diminished. The recapture of Suda is seen as a crucial win for Russia, as it is not only demonstrates the country's military capabilities but also undermines Ukraine's ability to negotiate from a position of strength. Ukraine had been relying on its control of Suda as leverage in potential peace talks. And so this development comes at a time when Ukraine is facing increased pressure from the international community to negotiate an end to the war. With Russian gains on the ground, Ukraine's negotiating position has become increasingly precarious. So the Russian Defense Ministry confirmed the recapture of Suda, stating that its forces had successfully repelled Ukrainian troops from the town. The ministry also claimed that Ukrainian forces had suffered significant losses in the battle. So this situation will continue to unfold, because we want to see how Ukraine will respond to the loss of Suda. One thing is certain, however: Russia's recapture of the town has significantly altered the dynamics of the conflict or the war, which has potentially paved the way for a negotiated settlement on Moscow's terms. Will this end this way? We'll definitely find out. This is where I will draw the curtains on tonight on Undaunted. But before we go, let's get the news and its highlights. Tonight on Undaunted, we told you that Bamenda city dwellers suffer as prices soar, and of course we addressed the plight of farm-to-market roads. Tonight we told you that Nkwen community had thwarted kidnapping attempt and overpowered imposters. We took a look at the President Ikome's address of the French ambassador's visit to Ambazonia. Also tonight we told you that Ambazonians are seeking solace in faith and religious activities. Also tonight, on the African scene, we told you that the EU summit is focusing on trade ties amidst Trump's effect, while still on trade war with the war of reciprocal tariffs. Foreign countries like China and Moscow are not relying. Alright, this is where we draw the curtains on tonight's Undaunted, bringing to the news on 12 stories. On behalf of Barrister Mbeseha and the technical team behind tonight's production, it's good night and God bless you.